Hello and welcome to Marketing Global Edition with me, Jasmine Montgomery.
And me, Piers Guyler. So Jasmine, what are we going to inflict on our poor listeners today?
Well, it's funny you should put it that way because today's subject may indeed feel a little heavy to some, but we will try to keep it light in the grand tradition of this podcast.
Oh dear, what is it? Funeral homes? The rise of the MAGA brand in the US? Birth control branding, what is it?
No, actually, but all of those sound amazing, so look out for those in future episodes.
Okay. Anyway, go on, spill it. What are we going to talk about?
Telecoms.
Oh, okay. Well, I say that. Boring. No? Yes? I don't know. I mean, personally, I quite like it, but go on, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, telecoms, as you well know, Guyla, are actually fascinating, and we are going to prove it.
I do indeed. I mean, we've worked on telecoms for many years. From like 2G probably. Anyway, I find it super interesting. I know you find it super interesting. But what about my poor father-in-law who listens to this?
Hi, Hammy. Okay, so let's not think of this as an episode about telcos as they are today. Basically, the buggers who send you your phone bill. Let's look at what is about to happen to telcos.
Okay, and what is that?
All hell is going to break loose. It is an incredibly exciting time to be a telco. It is a moment of existentialist crisis for the sector, and today's telcos face a fascinating fork in the road. Transform or die.
God, you're being very dramatic, Jasmine. Isn't it just a case of like either transform into a total solutions provider or become a pipe?
Okay, fine, but mine was more exciting. So what do we mean by become a pipe?
Well, traditional telco products like, remember, voice calls and texts, they've just become so highly commoditized. Essentially they're being replaced by free versions of the services. Brands like WhatsApp have made messaging and calls free. So, what is really the future for telco?
And this is what I find so fascinating. So in this episode, we're going to look at the new products that telcos will be offering in the future. And in part 2, we'll be looking at what that means for the positioning of telco brands. So basically, we're going to take you on a journey into the near future, which is going to blow your minds in terms of what we're going to be able to do, telcos will do for us. But we're going to look at it through a marketing lens and say, what does that mean for the brands?
Okay, but can we actually get to the bottom of these new technologies? Because I hear words like cloud computing and edge computing bandied around, but I bet most of us can't define what they really are.
Yeah, so imagine this. It is 2030. A patient in Sao Paulo, Brazil, is lying on the operating table, undergoing incredibly detailed and complex brain surgery. But his surgeon is in Tokyo. The surgeon is operating in real time on a holograph of the patient. The doctor can feel the scalpel in his hand and the patient's brain slice open beneath his knife.
But also, wow.
Yeah, and that's thanks to the haptic glove he's wearing. But every micro move he makes is streamed in real time and is repeated by a robot operating on the real patient in Sao Paulo. So because the network only has a lag time of 1 microsecond, there's essentially no delay between the surgeon moving his hand and the robot executing the move on the patient. That is the power of 6G.
No, not 5G. Oh, we've just launched 5G in all the markets. So, are we talking 6G now already?
I know, but 6G is coming. It's going to be here by about 2030, and it will change the world. And it will be brought to us by telcos.
Okay, all right, well, listen, I do know. Here's another one, right? Imagine a 7.8 magnitude earthquake in a remote area of Nepal. First responders need to coordinate rescue in a place where whatever little infrastructure there has been destroyed and all mobile signals have gone down everywhere, right? So they now use smartphones linked directly to satellites to coordinate the rescue. They stream high-res drone imagery directly to handheld devices, and this will allow them to map where the survivors are in real time using AI processing there and then, which is something called edge computing. There you go. All with no terrestrial infrastructure.
Yeah. I mean, it's completely amazing. That would be, life-saving for so many people. And here's one more scenario for you of the future, just to paint a picture. This is one that I particularly love because I love polar bears, but I can never remember to turn the lights off. So imagine that you're in Amsterdam, totally fabulous city, love Amsterdam. You're wandering through the streets of the city, and you feel a gentle breeze. Unbeknownst to you, the leading telco, KPN, has an energy-aware network. It picks up that breeze, and it realizes that the wind farms outside the city are ramping up. So it dynamically shifts a bunch of energy-intensive AI processing tasks to align with this green energy surge, reducing CO2 by 27% across peak hours. So the energy-aware network just cut your carbon footprint without you even noticing.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's like really, really impressive, right? But what's these scenarios we've just talked about mean for telcos?
It means that this is a sector that is undergoing possibly the most radical transformation of any sector we've seen in recent years. So, it means that they're shifting from bringing us our minutes and our gigabytes to bringing us, 6G, cloud, immersive reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, composable networks, APIs, edge computing, network digital twins, artificial intelligence. Don't worry if you don't know what all these things are, neither do we, frankly. But it's a huge shift in product, and it demands huge shifts in brand positioning on the part of the telcos that are bringing us this tech.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but most people still think of telecom companies like the folks who send you a bill or spam text, but really behind the scenes, they're stepping into a completely different role, aren't they? So, they're not just carriers of data, they're not just about connectivity at all anymore, but they are architects of digital infrastructure. In fact, if you look at where the big investments are going, they're not just laying fibre, they're building platforms, forming AI allowances, and staking a claim in the edge cloud.
Yeah, so today we're unpacking that transformation and what it means from a brand point of view. So from emerging technologies like 6G and satellite-to-device communication to the brand strategies that telcos are going to need to adopt to stay relevant or risk becoming invisible, because the next 10 years could determine which telcos become or remain global giants and which quietly fade into the background.
Okay, well, let's start with the technological building blocks. That's a hard word for me to say. Technological. I'm always messing up on one word anyway.
Oh, bless you. We're going to have to do another. We're going to have to do another bonus feature. If you just say it a couple more times, so I can actually turn it into a bonus feature.
Anyway, let's talk about the techie building blocks. First, 6G, right? Wow. Now I know we're barely halfway through talking about 5G adoption in many markets, and earlier I was like, ooh, but 6G isn't just about speed this time. It's about a complete reimagining of how we connect. So you have to think terahertz frequencies, think microsecond latency, think holographic communication in real time, and we'll talk about this, but real-time digital twinning that allows an entire city to simulate its traffic, energy, and emergency streams. It's
absolutely out there. And here's where it gets even more sci-fi, right? So 6G is exploring brain-computer interface, the idea that you could control a digital environment with your thoughts. And, that's not a fringe research project. It's on the roadmap for major players like SK Telecom and NTT Docomo. So, the brand implications of that are enormous. Suddenly you're not selling data, you're selling cognitive access. And it's just extraordinary.
But it's also like major, you trust a brand to go and, I don't know, buy a T-shirt, put something on your toast in the morning. But you've got to trust a brand that's going to plug into your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, put on your toast, that is very important. I do have to say I really trust Marmite. We should do a podcast on Marmite. But, absolutely. So building trust, it's not that easy for telcos, especially for new telco brands or ones with any kind of image problem, because the product is invisible. It's not like Marmite. I don't know if everybody, our listeners know Marmite. It's a very peculiar spread that we're all addicted to here in the UK. But, well, some people love it, some people hate it. But, if you're a peanut butter or a jam manufacturer or you can deliver trust through, fresh, good, tasty product delivered cleanly every single time. And people can touch it and see it and smell it and know that it's, good. Mm-hmm. But you can't deliver that kind of sensory product with a telco. It's invisible. connectivity isn't something you can see or touch. So it's really hard to build trust.
Okay. Next, okay, another big one is satellite to device connectivity. That means you're not going to be waving around trying to find a signal anymore with your phone, right? What we're going to see, well, players like Starlink, AST, Space Mobile, and telco alliances with other satellite operators. What it means is your phone can literally work anywhere. Middle of the ocean, deep in the mountains, or during a natural disaster. No cell tower is needed anymore. No signal.
Yeah, and I think that fundamentally changes the telco customer relationship. So you're not just the local network provider, you're the last reliable line of connection to the world. That's just a much more emotionally charged brand promise.
Yeah, and there's something called AI native networks.
Yeah.
These are networks that heal themselves. They adapt dynamically and anticipate congestion before it happens. Think like Terminator 2, where the robot that used to like repair itself.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. So Singtel are doing it. They're investing heavily in this area. A lot of like large custom language models tailored to telco operators, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, custom large language models. Yeah, that's super interesting. Then it's funny how everything in telco, in tech, always comes back to either Transformers or the Matrix. But anyway, then there's edge computing. Now, edge computing, right? I'm just going to explain, because everybody's always saying edge computing to me, and I've never understood this, but I finally get it. It's about moving the cloud closer to the user. So instead of data traveling back to a central server, it's processed locally. So like if you, for example, if you're in a self-driving car, right? And the self-driving car is having to process data all the time. Where is the next traffic light? Where is the next car that I might hit? What's going on? If it has to send all that data of, I've seen a traffic light, what does it mean? If it has to send that all the way back to San Francisco or somewhere to be processed and back again, you're going to crash before you stop at the red light. So it has to, what they do is they basically put all the processing stuff sort of on board the car. So the data is being processed at the edge, right by the edge of where it's being needed of the cloud. So that's what that is. But it's really interesting because it reduces latency. So it means that everything can happen in real time. So it enables applications like AR navigation, industrial robots, real-time translation. And Paragon by Singtel is a really great example. So it's an orchestration platform that lets enterprises spin up AI and network functions sort of at the edge. So brands are doing some really cutting-edge stuff with this.
Thank you for explaining that. I wasn't that sure. Another one which I mentioned earlier is about network digital twins.
So I thought this was like you could clone yourself, but it's not apparently, which I'm very sad about.
No. It's about virtual replicas of physical networks. Tesco's. The telcos can test, simulate, and optimize in real time. So instead of like doing things live, they just build a twin and they get that to work properly, and then they transport that across. Yeah, but also things like API marketplaces, where like enterprises can literally customize their network features on demand. So you're not just buying bandwidth anymore, you're composing it.
Oh, that's a fascinating thought. I mean, there are so many interesting, complete revolutionary things happening in here. And I think what it means to be a telco brand, is changing so much. Instead of just being kind of the people who send you the bill for the invisible product, these are going to be the people who are like driving the most extraordinary degree of change that we're going to have seen since the Industrial Revolution, possibly not even then. So it's a fascinating thought. Let's take a break and we'll come back and talk about how telco brands need to change in response to this.
Marketing Global Edition is sponsored by Adsy, the ad generator for small businesses that serves you effective and affordable ads in seconds. And by 7 Brands, the international advertising and branding agency that has worked with clients around the world from Coca-Cola to Facebook.
Okay, we are back and talking about how much telco products are going to be changing in the future.
Yes, we're imagining a fascinating future of drones, robots, AI and neural networks interfacing with our own brains.
And with all of this technological change, obviously, comes this massive shift in brand strategy. So telcos can no longer afford to be invisible infrastructure. They need to become something much more intelligent, adaptive, trusted, purpose-driven, I think.
Exactly. And not just for consumers. The enterprise market is where a lot of growth is going to come from. If you're offering edge computing, private 5G, AI-enhanced cloud, you're not just competing with other telcos. you're competing with like Amazon, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, competing with Amazon is a quite terrifying thought, frankly. But, I think this means that the telco brands of the future are going to have to really earn trust in entirely new areas, in areas of data privacy, latency guarantees. Don't worry, your car won't crash into somebody. Sovereign cloud hosting. Like, they're going to be guardians of so much of our data, our privacy, all these incredible things. So reliability isn't just uptime, is the network up or not? It's who's in control of the data, which is everything in our lives. And for telcos operating across jurisdictions, across many, many, many countries, that's a huge differentiator. So how do you build that degree of trust?
Okay, and we're also seeing a push towards narrative ownership. So brands like 𝐸𝐴ND, Etisalat's rebranded to 𝐸𝐴ND as a group, to actively position themselves not as telcos but as technology conglomerates. So it's 𝐸𝐴ND this, 𝐸𝐴ND that. And others like 𝐿𝐢, I think Indian 𝐿𝐢, are building their entire consumer ecosystems, not just networks but apps, streaming, commerce and finance.
So how would we go about branding these telcos of the future?
Well, that's an interesting question, Jasmine Montgomery.
So I think there are probably 4 or 5 archetypes of telco brand of the future.
Aha, all right, Sigmund, what are those archetypes?
Actually, archetypes were Jung, not Freud, but we have indeed come up with 5 delightful archetypes, and we propose to brand them now live on this very podcast. This is branding live in action. So, imagine that a client has come to us and said, right, we need to create a new brand to capture this new telco future. What would we do for them? So, here are 5 scenarios, right, that take us beyond being just somebody who sends you the bill or utility. So, Piers, can you kick us off with the first one?
Okay, the infrastructure oracle. Brands like NTT, STC, or Telstra are good examples. These telcos exude strategic vision, trust, and long-term value. They speak the language of policymakers, enterprise architects, and national infrastructure. Their tone would be authoritative, measured, and deeply credible.
And if we were branding a company like this, what might the brand identity look like?
So in branding terms, imagine something minimalist, technical, monochrome, maybe with metallic accents, and they'd have a really simple tone of voice. They'd say things like 0 latency, 0 downtime, 100% certainty.
Oh, interesting. And where would it advertise?
Things like the FT, the Economist, you see them in airports, financial districts, you see them sponsoring Davos. The TV ads, the content ads would be sort of NASA meets BlackRock.
Nice. Okay, so that was a very Piers sort of brand. All right, let me see if I can think of another one, another positioning option. I think there's something that I'm going to call the experience alchemist. Okay, this is probably going to be a bit of a Jasmine sort of brand. All right, yeah. But I think it's going to be inspired by the likes of a sort of SK Telecom or 𝐿𝐢. But I'm going to see if I can take it further. So these brands are playful, they're innovative, they're future facing. So if I think about kind of an experience alchemist, it's not selling bandwidth, it's creating, they're selling joy. Mm-hmm. So I'm sort of imagining, that this is a brand that you would see in kind of doing things like hologram concerts or immersive AR gaming or 3D virtual shopping. This is all enabled by their platform, I guess.
Okay, what would it look like, Jasmine, as a brand? What would it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I think about something like 𝐿𝐢, the Indian brand, it's got lovely, warm tone of voice. Their logo's cute and friendly. They're very friendly logo type. Their posts are very human, people everywhere. Although I've got to say, 𝐿𝐢, if you're listening, where are the women in your ads? It's weird, but they say things like, like good news, and we'd love to help on their website. That's the kind of messaging,
Okay, but what if we were building a brand from scratch?
Okay, so an experience alchemist brand, what would it look like? I guess it would be all about. I guess strategically it would be all about transforming everyday life into something kind of memorable, immersive, really emotional. So in a brand identity for a brand like that, I guess you'd expect kind of, I don't know, maybe like luminous gradients, like animated micro interactions, beautiful flowing forms. It would be very sort of sensory, inspiring. Its tone of voice would be quite poetic. And it might say things like, where your imagination meets our signal. So it would be lovely in places that are good at storytelling. It would be places like Instagram or YouTube Shorts. It would tell stories. It would do lovely collabs with influencers, with people like, I don't know, like musicians or kind of augmented reality artists and creators. And I guess it's the kind of brand that like you'd bump into at a festival or at an esports tournament. Like it would kind of either create or participate in lovely, beautiful experiences. You'd meet it at an immersive art experience with luminous floating lotus flowers.
Wow. Okay. No pressure there. Okay, look, I'm going to bring us right back down to earth. So mine, something much more real and about safety and trust and that sort of stuff. So, I think there are lifeline brands, the ones that turn you into, you turn to them in a crisis, right? And I'm going to call that this archetype the resilience partner. Okay, so the lifeline brands, you do turn to them in a crisis. And
actually, I really like lifeline brands. That's a great. I think I like that. But yeah, go on. Resilience
yeah,
partner, lifeline.
Fine. It's all about, they've got your back, right? They're satellite enabled. They're emergency services, all edge based. They're there with you. Everything's secure. It's all about disaster recovery. They're all about trust. They're always there, always on, no matter what. Yeah. And I think examples of sort of brands that will do that, Starlink Partners, and Ooredoo, those sort of brands. And I think they'd be really all about strength and connectivity, being there in those moments that matter.
Yeah.
They'd be really reassuring, values driven. And I suppose the sort of things they'd say is that they're always there. We're always on. Even when other people aren't. Even when the world isn't, we're always on.
Yeah,
and they'd be grounded, and I think they'd be epic, emotive, cinematic. It would be a bit like a Christopher Nolan film, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I love it. Okay, all right. I'm going to come up with a fourth one that I think we need to address. I think we need one that really addresses business as a segment and really looks at where kind of the B2B value lies for telcos of the future. So, kind of where like Singtel's Paragon is going, Orange Business, MTN. This is going to be a positioning that's all about helping businesses build like AI enhanced factories, smart cities, real time logistics networks. It's going to be, this has got to be, I think, where telcos become like real business partners, not just a service provider, but like it's going to be about really understanding your business, Mr. Customer. So I think visually this brand is going to be the Matrix. So for me, it's going to be about like, data stream visuals. It's going to be like robotic UX cubes, kind of kinetic interfaces, it's going to be full on high tech. But it's also got to be really, really smart. And you're going to know that because you're going to meet it in really smart places, or it's going to meet you in smart places like, Harvard Business Review, TechCrunch, Wired. And it's going to say cool, challenging things like, what if your business could think for itself? And, of course, it's going to do, I guess it would probably do like really smart programmatic digital advertising. So, it would target CTOs and stuff, chief technology officers. But it would sponsor AI conferences and industrial IoT hackathons.
Jasmine, do you actually know what an industrial IoT hackathon is?
I absolutely do. It's a bunch of teenage boys trying to reprogram my fridge from their mum's basement. Ha.
Okay, all right, fine. Okay, so is that 4 we've done so far?
Yep.
Okay, so let's
bring us home for a fifth.
Yeah, a final one would be I think the open world, right? The open world, it's like everyone's getting on. It's all about the future of humanity together, doing this together. So let's call it the open ecosystem builder.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay? Something like that, right?
Yeah.
It's where everyone, the telcos, everyone are opening their infrastructure up to developers, to each other, to partners, third-party partners, whatever. I think Vodafone's API Hub does this quite well, and it's all about flexibility and co-creation. I suppose the brand would be talking about access. We're talking about grassroots. We're talking about equity, and the look and feel of the brand would be really bright and warm. You can imagine things like handmade illustrations, and all the type would be accessible, so you can. It's really like it's right for people impaired vision, anything like that.
Right.
And it would be for everyone. So I think that it would say things like everyone deserves a digital future, and it would be beautiful photography, really emotive, and it would have real people in it, testimonials type stories, that sort of thing. And I think you'd find it, when you take your kids to their coding boot camp, you find it there, or women in tech events. It'd be popping up everywhere. It might be popping up in rural villages where there's a some sort of mobile banking demo going on.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, great. I love that one. I love all 5 of them. There you are, folks. 5 new future-proof brand positionings, no waiting, made up on the spot. So where does that leave the modern telco CMO, Chief Marketing Officer? Because, they've got a tough job ahead. They've got to rewrite the playbook. It is no longer enough to say we're upgrading our network. Now we're enabling future industries. We are actually building this entire future for people.
Yeah, they've got to bring the brand right, and the brand strategy's got to align with the tech roadmap. It's got to deliver the future, really. The brand, they've got to deliver the future. So whether you are, what do we call them? Resilience partner or intelligence broker, your tone, everything about you, your purpose, why you're on this planet to exist, has to match the role that you want to play in the future. So the brand has to reflect where you are taking people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it starts in some ways with deciding what you're not, because people are going to want to be all of them, and they can't. They have to pick one, or they have to pick something and stand for it, because, it's about what do you enable. What do you want your customers to really associate with you? What are you going to enable in their world? And, are you bold enough to claim that territory now? Because I think the early adopters of, these new positionings are going to win through.
Yeah, and it's a completely new landscape. The telcos aren't competing with each other anymore. They're competing with a whole new world of cloud providers and data platforms and these AI giants that are
absolutely
weird.
Yeah, so it's transition time, folks, from pipes to platforms, from low margin to high trust, from silent utility to whispering titan, a reference to last week's podcast, or even bellowing titan. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Okay, well, anyway, look, that's the journey ahead, and the brands that own it are going to shape the next digital decade.
Brilliant. Well, listen, that's all from us today. So see you next week. Bye for now.
You can wake up now.